Good morning. It's October 14th. This is To My Liberal Friends. And if you enjoy the podcast, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Well, if you've ever watched a horse race, you've heard the announcer excitedly say, "And down the stretch they come." We're just over 3 weeks from Election Day, and the race for the White House is as close as can be. Both candidates will have to turn out to vote if they expect to win. Both candidates will have to find a way to energize their voters and get them to the polls. When the elites of the Democratic Party watched Joe Biden flounder so badly in his debate with Trump in June, they knew they had to take some form of action. As I said last week, Joe Biden was not going to withdraw from the race on his own. He personally did not believe that the polling showed him trailing and could not admit to himself that the public had witnessed an aging man that was suffering from some form of cognitive decline. This put the Democrats in a bit of a bind. Kamala Harris was the vice president. She's also a black woman. She had a lot of weaknesses and was not polling well, but if they skipped over her, they would be accused of both sexism and racism. So without further ado, they coronated her the nominee, absent any real voter input. They went to their convention, and she spoke of joy and a new beginning. They celebrated when she appeared to win the debate with Trump. Point is, she was better prepared with canned answers, and Trump thought he could wing it. Found out that wasn't going to work this time. But in the meantime, Harris has avoided the press and media. She has already demonstrated this was not her strong suit. She needed to be controlled and put in friendly environments where the people posing the questions would not be too aggressive and lob softball questions her way. That was initially working as she stayed away from tough interviews and avoided any real open press conferences where she'd have to provide responses that weren't scripted by the staff. Now we're in that home stretch, and this is the race Democrats feared. Less than a month before the U.S. election, Donald Trump is regaining the slight edge he held before Democrats convened in Chicago to coronate Kamala Harris. According to the Real Clear Politics polling average in battleground states, Trump trailed Harris from late August until late September. Now, though, he's back on top at 48.4 to 48.1. Now, this lead is only fractional, and Harris is up 2 points in the popular vote, but the numbers have the Trump campaign feeling good. Many Democrats were wary of ousting Biden in large part because Harris, for a whole lot of reasons, would likely assume the mantle. Her numbers were similar to Biden's, and his weren't good. She'd become something of a joke in the meme-verse. She'd proven to be a weak national candidate ahead of the 2020 election. So it seems as though two things will provide her simultaneously true. The joy of the Harris campaign was real, and it sustained her for about a month, but it couldn't last forever under the unforgiving campaign spotlight. If you look at the average of the polling numbers, one pollster argued this past week that Trump is in his best polling ever at this point in the race, and that many in the media are undercounting his voting strength. Again, over on CNN, Harry Yenton crunched the numbers and opined, quote, "Let's say we have a polling miss like we had in 2020. What happens then?" Well, then Donald Trump wins the election in a blowout with 312 electoral votes, end quote. That would force you to ask what the Harris campaign is trying to do to reverse this trend. You've no doubt heard the phrase, "Nero fiddled while Rome burned." America isn't exactly burning, but millions of our fellow citizens are suffering from a series of disasters, natural and human-made. Democratic presidential nominee Harris, meanwhile, spent a significant part of the past week discussing Doritos and naps with shock jock Howard Stern, vibing and drinking beer on air with comedian Steve Colbert, and fielding questions from those hard-hitting journalists who host The View. And I mentioned the Doritos because that was up in Michigan. While Harris yapped with Stern, thousands of citizens in western North Carolina, recovering from the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, tried to cope without running water and electricity. Millions of other Americans in Florida were nervously bracing for Hurricane Milton, and our allies in Israel mourned the first anniversary of horrific October 7th attack while continuing to fight Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists. But Harris only talks to media people that will allow her to say nothing and tell how fabulous she is as a candidate. This kind of backfired this morning where the owner of Time magazine called her out for not agreeing to an interview. But she doesn't want those tough questions. Well, over on the Trump campaign, he regularly engages with the press. Sometimes probably shouldn't. He takes the tough questions and steps right into the lion's den where some of the media are waiting to pounce on him. This is a trait we should all want from a leader, willing to engage. For now, polls show Trump inching ahead in 5 of the 7 swing states that will decide the election, including must-win Michigan and Pennsylvania. It's too soon to know, however, if Harris' talk show blitz will help her or if Trump will benefit from her superficiality. There's one fact that has been true when it comes to polling with Trump in the race. His polling numbers are normally lower than his actual voter strength. I suspect that there are a lot of people who get polled who don't want to say they're voting for Trump, but once inside the voting booth or filling out their mail-in ballot, they check Trump for the win. That may once again be the real story if Trump wins in 3 weeks. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. And again, hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate it.